This happened not long after I moved into my new apartment. I'm Jessica, 32, and I'm a graphic designer. I thought moving into this cozy, refurbished Victorian building would be a fresh start. The creaky floors and vintage wallpaper had a charm I loved. As an introvert, being alone in my space fueled my creativity. At first, it felt soothing to have my own place, but that changed quickly. One evening, I sat on the couch with my sketchbook. The familiar scratch of my pencil filled the quiet. Suddenly, I heard a rhythmic tapping on the wall next to me. I froze. It felt like tapping fingers, but I told myself it was just the building settling. Still, shivers ran down my spine. I pushed the thought away and tried to focus on my sketch. As days passed, the tapping grew louder. I started to hear faint knocks, almost like someone was trying to get my attention. It followed me from room to room. My heart raced whenever the sound echoed through the silence. Sometimes, I thought I saw shadows flit past the corners of my vision. I worked myself up into fits of anxiety. Deep down, I knew something wasn't right. One night, the noises became more distinct. I was in bed, the darkness wrapping around me. I heard whispers, soft and unclear, passing through the thin walls. I sat up, listening. My heart was pounding, matching the rhythm of the knocks I had gotten used to. I wanted to scream, but I just covered my ears. I tried to sleep. I'm not sure how long I stayed awake, but every creak of the building made me jump. The next day, while rifling through the clutter of my storage closet, I stumbled upon a hidden door. The paint was peeling, and it looked like it hadn't been touched in years. My breath caught in my throat. I felt pulled to open it, but didn't dare. What could be behind that door? I thought about the noises and the whispers. Were they connected? I decided to investigate. I felt cold as I reached for the knob. My hand shook. I hesitated and pulled back. I wasn't sure if I really wanted to know, but as I stood there, the echo of my heart filled the room. Finally, I took a step back. I felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. But just then, I heard it again, a soft knock from behind the sealed door. It was the same rhythm that had haunted my nights. I turned and bolted for the safety of my couch. My breath came fast. I couldn't shake the thought. What if I wasn't alone after all? I glanced back at the closet where everything had begun. The knocking stopped, but I still felt watched. Just then, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. When I turned, nothing was there, but now I was sure. I wasn't alone, and I had to know what was behind that door. Would I dare go back? The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I had barely slept, haunted by the whispers echoing in my mind. I drew the curtains tight, letting in just enough light to chase away the shadows. Still, my apartment felt darker. As I sipped my coffee, I stared at the closet door. It loomed ominously, like a sentinel judging my every move. The knocking from the night before kept replaying in my mind. What was hiding behind it? I felt an overwhelming urge to know. Curiosity gnawed me, but fear held me captive. Determined to gather some courage, I decided to grab my phone and ask my neighbor what she knew about the place. I needed answers. I hurried down the narrow hallway, each step echoing in the empty space. When I reached her door, I hesitated again. What if she thought I was crazy? Taking a deep breath, I knocked. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing a woman in her late 40s. She had warm brown eyes, but looked wary. "Can I help you?" she asked. Hi, I'm Jessica, your neighbor. I just wanted to ask you about the building." My voice trembled slightly. She narrowed her eyes, a flicker of recognition passing over her face. "You've heard the noises, then?" I nodded, surprised she knew. "What is it? Is there something wrong with the place?" Her expression shifted to one of concern. "It's an old building. They can settle sometimes, but some tenants have reported things. Just stay aware." Her vague warning unsettled me. "What kind of things?" She hesitated. Then, as if weighing her words, she said, "People claim to feel watched or hear voices. I've been lucky, I guess. Just remember, some doors are better left closed." Chills ran through me. "Do you mean the door in my closet?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. A shadow fell over her face. "That door has a history. "Just be cautious, Jessica." The conversation left me reeling. When I returned to my apartment, I looked at the closet door again. Would it really be wise to open it? As if an answer, a soft knock echoed from within the wall. I froze, the dread returning with a vengeance. The rhythmic tapping was somehow both familiar and more sinister now, like a warning I couldn't fully comprehend. My heart raced again, loud and chaotic. I took a step back, heart pounding harder. That was when I saw it. A sliver of light slipped from beneath the door, like a wisp of smoke trying to escape. My breath quickened. Suddenly, this wasn't just a door anymore. It was a threshold leading to something unknown and potentially dangerous. I stood there for a moment, grappling with fear and curiosity. Then the light flickered. My hand shook. I had to decide, would I dare to face whatever lay beyond, or would I turn away and leave it all behind? I stood frozen, staring at the closet door. My heart raced as the light from beneath it pulsed, like an invitation or a warning. I could feel the weight of my neighbor's words pressing down on me. Some doors are better left closed. But I couldn't just back away now. With a shaky breath, I reached for the handle. It felt cold against my palm, sending a shiver through me. I turned it slowly, and the door creaked open with a slow, reluctant groan.
I froze, squinting into the dark, trying to discern something, anything. My eyes adjusted, and I caught a glimpse of a figure, just a silhouette shifting in the shadows. The whispers I had heard before started to rise again, swirling around me like smoke, unintelligible, yet urgent. "Who's there?" I managed to whisper, my voice trembling. No reply came, just the continued wrestling, and a feeling of something watching me. I tightened my grip on the key, desperate for comfort from the cold metal. I took another hesitant step forward, squinting again, but the figure seemed to flit in and out of view. My pulse quickened. "Show yourself," I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. Suddenly, the figure seemed to materialize. A girl, not much older than me, with wild hair and wide eyes that glowed in the dimness. She looked just as startled as I was, but there was a familiarity in her expression. "Jessica?" she whispered, her voice a soft echo of my own name. I blinked hard, my mind racing. "Do I know you?" She hesitated, biting her lip like she was scared to continue. "I'm the one you're looking for." "What do you mean? Looking for?" My mind was a jumble. Who was she, and how did she know me? Suddenly, the noise intensified, the cacophony of voices swelling as in response to our conversation. They seemed to vibrate off the walls and forced a shiver down my spine. "Listen, you're in danger, Jessica." The girl's voice darkened. "You shouldn't have come here. You have to go back." But before she could finish, the shadows behind her deepened, swirling and morphing into something more substantial. A darkness that didn't belong, that felt alive and hungry. I quickly stepped back, the fear shredding my thoughts apart. "Wait!" I yelled, panic clawing at me. "What is happening?" "Trust the key," she shouted, pointing at it. "You need to unlock the truth. If you don't, we might never get out." I glanced down at the key, feeling its weight against my palm. It was my only connection to understanding this madness, but before I could respond, the growing darkness surged forward, and I stumbled back against something solid, a door. I pressed against it, desperately trying the key in the lock just as shadows reached for me. The rustling was now deafening, every whisper combined into a loud roar. I turned the key, praying it would work. With a loud click, the door swung open, flooding the space with a blinding light. I barely had time to react as the girl was pulled back into the shadows, her terrified eyes locking on mine. "No!" I screamed, reaching out, but the darkness consumed her. I stepped through the door into the light, slamming it shut behind me. My heart was racing, but the chaos subsided. I was outside the closet again, panting and shaken. The air felt different, lighter, but the girl's plea echoed in my mind. I was safe for now, but I knew I couldn't escape what I had seen. The girl was still out there, and I had just scratched the surface of whatever reality I had stumbled into. What just happened? I whispered to myself. I had to find answers. The next day felt strange. I woke up confused, heart still pounding with the memory of the girl in the shadows. It was just a dream, I told myself, just a nightmare. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The key still sat on my bedside table, a cold reminder of my encounter. I stumbled through my morning routine, too distracted to focus. The sunlight felt different, like it couldn't pierce through the weight in my chest. After school, I planned to return to the closet, to face whatever had driven me away. I couldn't shake the feeling that the girl was still in danger, and I had to save her. That afternoon, I sat in my room flipping through a book, but the words jumbled together, and my mind drifted back to that moment. What truth was the girl talking about? Why had she known my name? I couldn't ignore it any longer. Once night fell, my heartbeat quickened. I crept to the closet, the doorknob cold under my fingers. I hesitated, recalling the darkness that had consumed the girl. Yet I had to know what was waiting for me. I took a deep breath and opened the door. The light flickered, and for a moment I thought I could see the edges of shadows curling inside. "Here goes nothing," I murmured, stepping through again. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air changed. The whispers returned, swirling around me, clearer this time, but still indistinct. They darted in and out of comprehension, like half-formed words teasing at the periphery of my mind. "Jessica," they murmured, just like the girl had said. My heart ached at the sound, an echo of urgency. I looked around. The space was dim, but I could see the outline of the girl's figure once more, flickering like a candle flame. "You came back," she exclaimed, relief evident in her voice. "I couldn't leave you," I replied, my voice steadier than it felt. "Thank you," she said, her gaze flickering with something deeper, a knowledge I didn't yet possess. I clenched the key, determined to understand. "But how? You said I had to unlock the truth." "Follow me," she urged, moving closer to the edge of the shadows. I took a cautious step forward. She pointed to the far side of the room. "There's something there, something you need to see." I nodded and walked toward where she gestured. The whispers grew louder, a chaotic chorus of the lost and searching. As I approached, the darkness shifted, forming a wall of swirling ink. It pulsed like a heartbeat, alive and pulsating. Then I saw it, an outline, a doorway behind the darkness. I reached out instinctively, but as I did, a force pulled me back, violently shoving me away from the threshold. I stumbled, falling hard to the ground. The girl's eyes widened in fear. "No, stop!"
she cried, desperation in her voice. "You have to break through!" I scrambled back up, disoriented. The whispers combined into a single command, drowning out my thoughts. "Unlock it! Unlock it now!" With trembling hands, I grabbed the key from my pocket. The fear flooding through me mingled with determination. As I raced back to the swirling void, I approached the doorway and thrust the key forward. Suddenly, everything went dark. When I regained consciousness, the darkness felt solid, as if it were holding me in its grip. I lay on something hard, the coldness seeping through my clothes. Blinking against the absence of light, I tried to gather my thoughts, but couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. "Jessica?" The girl's voice pierced through the heaviness. It was softer now, almost a whisper. "Are you okay?" I think so." I pushed myself upright, heart racing. "What just happened?" "I don't know," she replied. "But we're still here, in the shadow realm. You have to keep going." I forced my eyes to adjust as I stood. In front of me was a vague outline of walls, so thick with darkness I could barely make out the shapes. A chill ran down my spine. What did this realm hold? "Where do we begin?" I asked, my voice echoing strangely in the void. "There's a way out," she said, stepping closer. "But it's more than just unlocking a door. You need to confront what lives in the shadows." "I don't even know what I'm facing," I admitted, gripping the key tightly. There was still no sign of that doorway I had seen moments ago. What if it's worse than I imagined? "The key is your connection to the truth," she explained, her eyes glinting in the dark. "Trust it. Trust yourself." I nodded, but could feel uncertainty gnawing at me. I took a step, and suddenly the darkness began to shift and swirl around us like smoke. It twisted into strange shapes, forming faces with hollow eyes, mouths open as if they wanted to scream. My stomach lurched. "Stay close," I called out, instinctively reaching for her hand. The girl took it, her grip strong and reassuring. The faces melted away. I blinked, trying to shake the feeling of dread that settled more heavily on my chest. What were those things? "They're the lost ones, echoes of people who once roamed here. They can guide you or trap you," she replied. I swallowed hard. "Guide me where?" "To the truth." With a deep breath, I pushed further into the darkness, guided by the girl's presence. As we walked, I could hear faint whispers again, beckoning us, pleading for something. I felt a flicker of empathy. Were they trying to warn us or draw us deeper into despair? Then, without warning, a shadow jumped from the wall, morphing into a figure, tall and imposing.
It loomed over us, swirling like a storm. "You shouldn't be here," it growled, voice low and threatening. The girl squeezed my hand. "Don't look away," she said urgently. "It feeds on fear." My heart pounded in my ears. Somehow, I found my voice.
"What do you want?" It stepped closer, its presence suffocating. "You will never escape. You must join us." I glanced at the girl, her eyes wide with fear and determination, and then at the darkness around us. I couldn't let it consume me, so I held out the key, trembling but resolute. "Not today!" I shouted, my voice stronger than I felt. The key glowed faintly, a beacon in the dark. The figure recoiled, hissing. That's when I felt it, a pull at the back of my mind. Something from the shadows was trying to reach inside me. I gasped, realizing that this was not just a battle for the girl's freedom, but my own as well. What had I unlocked, and what would happen if I failed? I had to fight back. I took a shaky breath, trying to ignore the shadows that clawed at my mind. The figure stepped back, but it was still there, lingering like a storm cloud, threatening to unleash chaos. The pull intensified, a cold sensation that made my skin crawl. I clenched my teeth, refusing to give in. "Keep moving," the girl urged, tugging me forward. I followed her, heart racing, listening to the echo of our footsteps against the cold, unseen ground. As we walked, the whispers grew louder, swirling around us in a cacophony of emotions: fear, sorrow, desperation. I tried to make sense of them, but it felt like 1,000 different voices were screaming in my head. Along with the fear, I felt a swell of anger toward the shadows for trapping these souls here. Then I stumbled upon something solid. I reached out and touched what felt like a wall. It was cold and rough. "What is this?" I asked, turning to the girl. "A barrier," she said, stepping up beside me. "We need to find a way through. The key may have power here, but we must be sure of ourselves before using it." Her voice held a hint of urgency that made my stomach twist. I nodded. The darkness around us felt like a living creature, restless and hungry. The barrier trembled as I pressed my palms against it. The shadows vibrated, alive and watching. "They're angry," I whispered. "Because we're here," she replied, glancing over her shoulder as if afraid of what might come next. "They don't want us to succeed, but you can't give in to their fear. Use the light of the key." "Right." I took a deep breath, trying to remember the warmth that had flared when I'd held it. I lifted the key, letting the faint glow illuminate the darkness ahead. It swirled under its light, revealing flickers of shapes and forms that faded before I could get a grasp on what they were. That's when I saw it, a small door within the barrier, barely visible. "There," I pointed, excitement bubbling in my voice. "Yes, but it won't stay open for long," the girl warned. "We need to act fast. Focus on the truth, Jessica." The truth? What did that even mean? My head spun, memories flooding in. Was this a test of my fears, my regrets? I concentrated, the key pulsing in time with my heartbeat, and the door slowly creaked open. The shadows hissed, anger emerging like a wave. I hesitated, glancing back at the girl. "What if we can't do this?" She steadied my resolve. "We can. Trust yourself." I took a step toward the door, adrenaline coursing through me. But as soon as I did, the swirling figures cropped up again, their faces twisting with malice. "You will join us," they chanted, their voices overlapping, drowning out my determination. The key flickered, and panic set in. "I can't!" But deep inside, I felt something shift, a spark of resilience forming in defiance of their incantations. Then, the door widened, pulling me in. I looked at the girl. "Come on!" We rushed through, heart pounding, but just as we crossed the threshold, the shadows erupted, crashing against the barrier like waves against a shore. I screamed as the darkness threatened to pull me back, but I gripped the key tightly. "Stay with me," the girl shouted, her eyes fierce and determined. And suddenly, I understood. I had to fight not just for our freedom, but to break the cycle, to sever the ties that bound these lost souls to despair. That's when everything went still. Just for a moment, all I could hear was the faint sound of my own breathing, as if the world had paused, waiting. The moment passed, and I felt a jolt of energy surge through me. The air crackled, and I blinked, trying to acclimate to my surroundings. What lay before us was a vast, dimly lit expanse that felt both familiar and terrifying.
It was a cavernous room, the walls lined with echoes of faces contorted in anguish, forever trapped in their silent screams. Each flicker of light from the key cast shadows that danced wildly against the stone, creating a spectacle that sent shivers down my spine. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The girl stepped forward, her brow furrowed. "It's a prison, a place where the shadows keep their lost. We have to find a way out, and quickly." Fear gripped me, clenching my gut like a vice. I looked at the girl. "How do we escape?" She pointed toward the far end of the room. "We need to reach that archway. It might lead us to the way out, but the shadows will try to stop us." The archway loomed like a distant goal, but as I took a step, a cold breeze swept through the room. The whispers clawed back at me, louder than ever, wrapping around my mind. "Stay with us, stay with us," they echoed, a chilling chorus that tugged at my resolve. I clenched my teeth and gripped the key tighter as we hurried forward. The air thickened, and I felt the darkness swirling around us, closing in. It felt alive, angry at our intrusion. "What do you think they want?" I asked, breathless. "Power," the girl replied, her eyes darting around. "They want to feed off our fear. We mustn't let them." Just as I began to gain my footing, a shadow broke free from the crowd, leaping forward.
The figure took shape, a wraith-like being, devoid of features, just darkness swirling in the rough approximation of a person. "You cannot escape!" it shrieked, its voice a haunting amalgamation of the other whispers. I stumbled back, fear washing over me like icy water. "Run!" I shouted, pushing the girl ahead of me. We bolted toward the archway, but the wraith-like figure lunged at us, tendrils of shadow erupting from its form. "Focus on the light!" the girl yelled, raising her hands. I followed her lead, lifting the key. Its weak glow brightened, fighting back the darkness. For a moment, the shadows recoiled, allowing us a brief glimpse of our path. But then the darkness responded, surging forward to envelop us. I could feel it crawling on my skin, clinging with its cold fingers. I forced myself to scream, "Get away!" and swung the key like a weapon. The wraith shrieked, and as it did, it blurred, disintegrating into tiny fragments of shadow. We didn't stop running. The archway was closer now, and with each step my heart pounded louder than the whispers. It was almost in reach when a second shadow erupted on our right. This one was larger, more menacing, with eyes like burning coals. It let out a roar that shook the very ground beneath us. "Jessica!" the girl implored, panic etching every word. "We need to keep moving!" That's when I saw it, a flicker of light beyond the archway, a glimpse of hope in a sea of despair. I surged forward, fueled by adrenaline, stepping through the entrance just as the dark figure lunged again. The moment I crossed the threshold, the world shifted. I stumbled forward into a new realm, but the darkness clawed at my back. The archway slammed shut behind me, sealing off the chaos. I turned, breathing heavily, but I knew I hadn't escaped yet. The warmth of the key still flared in my palm, and I had a feeling my fight was just beginning. But I wasn't alone. The girl stood beside me, and together we prepared to face whatever awaited us in this new world. As shadows stretched toward us through the archway, I took a deep breath. "What's next?" I asked, knowing the answers would be anything but simple. The moment the archway closed, a chill swept over us. The new realm we found ourselves in was bright, almost blinding compared to the darkness we had just escaped. But the light felt wrong, too sharp and glaring, like it was hiding something in its brilliance. "Where are we?" I asked, squinting against the harsh glow. The girl looked around, her expression a mix of curiosity and wariness. "I don't know. It feels unfamiliar." I took a few hesitant steps forward, scanning the surroundings. We stood in what appeared to be a vast white expanse, with the ground shimmering like glass under our feet. Strange shapes rose in the distance, distortions of light and shadow woven together. They twisted like mirages, teasing us with their delicate forms. "Do you feel that?" she said, crossing her arms as if to ward off an unseen cold. "Yes," I replied, sensing a deep unease gnawing my stomach. "It's like we're being watched." As if in answer to my unspoken fear, one of the shapes flickered closer. It morphed into a figure, a woman, her face obscured. She hovered just above the ground, her presence drawing me in like a moth to a flame. "Do not approach her!" my companion shouted, grabbing my arm. "It's a trap!" But I couldn't move. The figure beckoned to me silently, and I felt a strange pull, like a thread tugging at the very core of my being. "It's okay," I said softly, glancing back at my friend. "I think she's trying to help."
The girl's expression hardened. No, we can't trust anything here. You have to focus on the key. At the mention of the key, I instinctively gripped it tighter. The warmth radiated through my palm, a reminder of my purpose. With a burst of clarity, I stepped back, my pulse quickening. The figure flickered, and the warmth felt threatened. "Stop!" I shouted as her form wavered. "What do you want from us?" The woman's face shifted, momentarily revealing a glimpse of sorrow that echoed in my chest. "Release me," came a voice that was not a voice, but a whisper that curled through the air. A plea wrapped in despair. "Release her?" I echoed, glancing at the girl beside me. "What does that even mean?" "I don't know, but whatever it is, we can't give in," she urged, backing away from the unsettling spectacle. Just then, a loud crack echoed through the whiteness, and the ground trembled beneath us. The shape of the woman contorted into something monstrous, the sorrow turning to rage. "You cannot deny me!" she screamed, her eyes suddenly ablaze with a fierce fire. The key in my hand began to vibrate, pulsing with energy. I could feel it resonating with the chaos unfolding around us. "What do we do?" I yelled over the growing din. "Use it! Find the way out!" the girl shouted, her eyes wide with urgency. Before I could respond, the ground beneath us shattered into 1,000 glimmering shards, and I fell into darkness. Everything faded away, the blinding light replaced by a void that swallowed me whole. Then everything went silent. I lay there, suspended in nothingness, unsure if I had escaped or if this was yet another trap. As I struggled to catch my breath, I suddenly heard a soft voice behind me. "You shouldn't have come here." I swung around, heart racing, and saw another shadow lurking in the dark. Someone was here with me. The figure stepped forward, revealing itself. It was a man, drawn from the very depths of the darkness, his face hard to read, yet somehow familiar. "I've watched you for so long," he murmured, his eyes searching mine. "You're not supposed to be here." "Who are you?" I managed to choke out, my heart pounding wildly in my chest. "Another lost soul, like the girl," he replied. "I'm a guardian of these realms, a keeper of the bridges between them."
"You opened a door that should have remained closed." His voice was cold, yet tinged with sadness. "She's in danger," I insisted, gripping the key tightly. "I have to save her." "What you found is not just a key," he said, shaking his head. "It binds you to these realms, intertwines your fate with every shadow and light." He paused, his gaze piercing into me. "Once you enter, it's no longer just about escape. You become part of their struggle." I felt the weight of my choices deepen. "But I can't leave her," I whispered, the fear curling in my gut. "What do I do?" "Face the truth," he said softly, stepping back into the shadows. "Only when you confront what binds you to this place will you find the way out. But be warned, the truth is not always what you want it to be." With those words echoing in my mind, the void swirled around me, pulling me back into the unforgiving light. I found myself standing in the white expanse once more, but the figure was gone. Panic gripped me. "No, not again!" I shouted, looking frantically for any trace of the girl. Then a figure flickered to life in the distance, the woman from before. "Release me!" she shrieked again, but this time her voice was laced with desperation. "No!" I cried out, instinctively raising the key. "You're not free to take anyone else." The ground trembled violently, and a fissure opened beneath me. "You will never understand the bonds that bind us," screamed the swirling darkness around her. I could feel it trying to pull me into its depths, just as it had with the girl. But I stood firm, remembering the words of the guardian. I couldn't let it consume me. I had to confront my own fears, those lurking shadows that had followed me even before I opened that cursed door. I clutched the key tightly and shouted, "You're not the only one with power here." As I held it aloft, the light enveloped me, pushing back against the darkness. I felt the warmth flood through me, a surge of clarity. Shadows writhed, but began to dissolve, shrinking back into the abyss from which they had come.
With newfound strength, I turned my focus to the figure of the woman whose form flickered between light and dark. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steady now, breaking through her chaotic cries. "What is it going to take to set you free?" The shadows around her began to pulse, creating a tempest of anger and grief. "Release me from this place," she begged, shifting between her despair and something darker. "You have the power." In that moment, it clicked. She wasn't just imprisoned, she was a part of the darkness, bound to it just as much as I was to the key. "You don't want to be free, do you?" I shouted over the noise, the images of her despairing face suddenly striking a familiar chord within me. "You thrive here." Her expression faltered, a flicker of truth breaking through the surface. She hesitated, fear crossing her features. "I get it," I pressed on, feeling the momentum shift.
You're afraid of being lost, but you don't have to be. The moment I said those words, I realized I wasn't just talking to her. I was addressing the specter of my own fears, my loneliness, the darkness I had let settle in my own heart. "I am afraid," she cried, a tremor in her voice, "but I am tethered to the shadows. It's where I belong." "No," I said fiercely, stepping forward, key glowing. "You are not bound to these shadows. You were never meant to lose yourself in them. You can redefine who you are." And in that heartbeat, something shifted. The whispers grew fainter. The malevolent form around the woman began to recede. Her gaze met mine, and for an instant I glimpsed the girl, the spark of hope underlying the burden she carried. "Help me," she whispered, her voice wavering. The surrounding darkness trembled, and with a defiant cry I raised the key high. "Let go! I can help you break free, together!" In a blinding rush of light, I thrust the key at the phantom figure. The darkness howled, but I let the light course through me, connecting to all the pain and fear, pulling away its power. Suddenly, a pulse of warmth shot through the air, and the walls of the realm began to shift, breaking apart like glass. The woman's form shimmered, and I felt the connection solidifying as she slowly began to dissolve into a cascade of light. "Thank you," she whispered, just before the darkness folded in on itself. And then, silence. As I stood in the now empty white expanse, the absence of shadows felt surreal, but I still felt the remnants of unease lingering in the air around me. I had faced part of the darkness, but I knew it wasn't over. The key glowed softly in my hand, the warmth still pulsing. I could feel it humming with potential, the promise of truths yet to uncover. Hope surged through me, pushing back the shadows that wanted to creep in. I took a deep breath. "Wherever this takes me next," I said quietly to myself, "I'm ready." Even with the ghost of that woman trailing behind me, shadows still danced at the edges of my mind, but for the first time, I felt prepared to confront whatever mystery awaited. Walking toward the horizon of the unknown, I knew I'd have to leave some questions unanswered, and that was okay. I was no longer a passive observer of my own fears. I was ready to face the uncertainty. What lay ahead? Only time would tell.